Hello and welcome to another edition of Caged In Conversations, where I speak to somebody who has some kind of link to Nicolas Cage in some way, whether it's they've created something weird and wonderful or have worked with Cage in the past in some capacity. On this episode, I speak to someone who is very much the former. I speak to UCB alum, sketch comedy, stand-up comedy writer and performer Kevin Froleiks about a crazy idea he had, which I think borders on genius almost. That is Vampire's Kiss, the musical. So during lockdown 2020, he decided to write a musical based on Vampire's Kiss. So in this conversation, we go through everything Vampire's Kiss related. If you're a big fan of that film, even if you're not, listen to this one because it's super fun. And I've tacked on a song at the end from the musical, and I suggest right up front that you go on to Kevin's Twitter page and you can download a Google document which has all of the songs and the script, and do what I did. Kind of listen along and read the script as you go, and you will be begging, like I am, for this to get a stage adaptation. There's a slight technical hitch in this episode with some of the audio. For some reason, the Zoom audio didn't turn out the best, but don't let that dissuade you in any way. It's still a fantastic conversation, and I promise you, after a couple of minutes, it will kind of settle down in your mind, and you will just get lost in this conversation about this weird and wonderful film. There's even a moment where I just dipped out of the conversation, and I think I've patched it together. So if they've kind of it feels like two sentences slammed together, that's what that is. So sit back, enjoy, and prepare as we rage with Cage. Whoa. One last thing before I let you go. You have until the 12th of February to pre-order your Not the Bees Caged In t-shirt. The amazing design by Tim Sinclair, which sees Nicolas Cage in the Lord Summersisle position as the Wicker Man burns behind him. But that's not all. This t-shirt, you can pull it up over your head, revealing the Nicolas Cage bees in the cage face. So you can ruin every photo in your family's history, or if you want to look the belle of the ball when you're heading down to that human sacrifice, because we know that this has been a tough year. Maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need to burn someone in a Wicker Man to make it all better. Who knows? But yeah, head on over to cagedinpodcast.limitedrun.com to order your t-shirt now. Before I close it, I want to make this super limited. This is for the real Caged In fans, for the real Cage heads. So head on over and buy one. Hello guys, and welcome to another episode of Caged In. This one is a bit different to how things normally run on this podcast, because I found a man crazy enough to have adapted the cult classic Cage film Vampire's Kiss into what could be a Broadway smash, as you will. Today on the podcast, I have Kevin Froleiks. How are you, Kevin?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So for anyone who doesn't, obviously, the listeners out there who might not know who you are you and what do you do?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And if anybody out there does know me, I'd be shocked. But I live in New York City. Which is where Vampire's Kiss takes place. So it really is a one of those movies that I think captures the essence of the city here. But I'm a stand-up and sketch comedian, somewhat retired now because of COVID, and a lot of live performance hasn't been happening. But yeah, no, that's what I've been doing here. I've also, the sketch comedy stuff kind of led to some theater work that I've done. This is the second musical I've ever written. The first one was a parody of Lewis and Clark called Great Frontier. It was a satire parody of the Lewis and Clark story. And yeah, I think just being in lockdown isolation right now drove me to madness. I saw Vampire's Kiss for the first time with some friends over Zoom. One of my friends was like, "Oh, you guys need to see this." He's equally obsessed with Nicolas Cage, just his essence. And he was like, "If you've never seen this, you need to." He told us nothing about it. We just started watching it, and like, I wish we'd recorded it because it's one of those movies that, at least for me, it really got into my soul, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went on YouTube and I must have watched the alphabet monologue like 50 times the next day. We started like, you know, over phone calls, we would just like try to do like dueling Cage impressions of that scene. And yeah, and then like earlier in the summer, I've just like, every now and then you kind of get these like manic creative impulses where it's like, you know what, I just want to write a dumb musical. And an awful trend in Broadway is they'll just take a movie from the 90s or 80s and make it a musical, and then people buy tickets to it because they're like, oh, I know that movie. I saw Mean Girls. I'll go see it on Broadway.
Yeah,
From what I hear, Mean Girls was very good, but there's plenty that were not good.
the thing
And
they
I,
tend to do a lot of the time though is they make them like jukebox musicals, which I feel is
yeah,
like
yeah,
even more lazy. So it's like you've nicked you've nicked like the plot of a film, and then you've just added like some hits of that time, whether it's like a Rock of Ages, where it's like, do you know what I mean? It's just
yeah, yeah.
a loose story around the fact you just want to sing that we built this city on rock and roll or something.
God, yeah, that one's so bad. um, yeah, but I'd put a poll out on just like my social media. I was like, guys, I'm feeling crazy. Like, if I wrote what's the one movie that you think would make a terrible musical from like the 80s or something? And Short Circuit almost won, and I was actually very excited to do a Short Circuit musical because that movie's crazy and it's one of my favorite movies from when I was a kid. And then one of my friends just like said Vampire's Kiss, and then like at the last minute, like 150 people just like responded to the survey, and Vampire's Kiss narrowly beat Short Circuit. And then I got excited. I watched the movie again, really noticed some of the subtleties of the film, and spent all of September just manically writing songs and scenes for this thing.
So this year was your first time watching Vampire's Kiss. This isn't something that's like
Yeah,
sat with you. Oh, amazing!
yeah,
It's a very interesting film, and I think a very like much maligned film a lot of the time. It's obviously it's like the go-to memeable Nicolas Cage film, like all the kind of reactionary gifts that have come from it. And there's a famous YouTube clip called Nicolas Cage loses his shit, and it's like 60% Vampire's Kiss, because there's just so
yeah.
many like cherry picked moments from it. But I always find it really
Mhm.
interesting. Like somebody who's been on the podcast, their letterbox review of it is Peter Lowe crawled so Patrick Bateman could walk. And like I always look at it in this way that that's, for anyone listening, that's Brad Hanson, by the way. So give him due credit. But I always look at this as like a nice companion piece to American Psycho, because it's like they're both roughly about the same thing. A New York yuppie losing his fucking mind, but
Yeah.
in this case, we've got what, an early 20s Nick Cage kind of tearing up the acting textbook and doing whatever the fuck he wants.
For sure. Yeah, it's really funny that you mentioned American Psycho. Yeah, I also thought that. I'm like, all right, this is a guy in a suit. He's a, a literary agent who somehow has like the lavish lifestyle of a Wall Street stockbroker. So that part, okay, sure. But I think there was like an interview with Christian Bale who said that he like really channeled Nicolas Cage in this movie, just like just for some of his more bizarre like characterizations in American Psycho. But then coincidentally, like in my opinion, a very good Broadway adaptation of a musical. And actually, it started in England and West End, but the American Psycho musical is actually really good.
Oh, what? No,
um,
I've never seen it. That like that would totally be right up my street as well.
It yeah, you can see the I don't know if the West End, I forget who starred in it in the West End production. It was someone who was also recently one of the Doctor Who's, but I'm blanking on what his name was. Um, but yeah, it started over there. It was a big hit on West End. It moved to Broadway like a lot of those shows do. and Benjamin Walker, who was in a show called Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, which was like a punk rock biography musical of Andrew Jackson being a crazy, absolute crazy racist figure in American history. Um, but he was in it. It was original songs by Duncan Sheik, who did Spring Awakening and also is like a pop star in his own right. And then occasionally they would shoehorn in some like '80s classics, like "In the Air Tonight" was in there, Phil Collins, and a
Amazing.
couple others. But it only ran. It was a huge flop in the states. It only ran, I think, like 40 performances, which is
Oh shit.
nothing. Like, and it was. I mean, it was one of those. Like, I got to see it. I saw it when it was in previews. I lucked out. Like, tickets were very cheap to it because they were just like, please come see this. And it's not the kind of show that if you're visiting New York, you're not going to be like, honey, let's get the kids and see American Psycho. No, you're going to go see Lion King. You're going to go. You want to have a fun time. And this was like, it was dark. It's all about like the evils of capitalism and just like this man's soul is being ripped out and there's like blood and sex. It's not everybody who was going to see it and enjoy it saw it and enjoyed it, and then that was it, and then it ended up closing. But really fantastic. So, but it's very, they really captured, like, did some cool stuff on stage with like the surreal aspect of it. You never really know, like, if it's in his head or if it's not. And which is hard to do. Like, in a movie, you have the benefit of, showing
Hmm.
scenes from a different person's point of view, or, at the end of American Psycho, the guy comes in and says like, oh no, Paul Allen was fine. I just had lunch with him. And
Hmm.
you kind of do that, but they really like use the stage to like create these weird scenes, like bodies just like fall out and then like the lights flicker and the bodies are gone. They really did some incredible stage magic. So
Amazing.
um I returned the Vampire's Kiss the movie inspired American Psycho the movie, and then vice versa, American Psycho the musical inspired Vampire's Kiss the musical.
So, what's your reading of like the kind of story of vampires? Is it all in Peter Lowe's head, or is it does does most of it or all of it actually happen?
That's I don't think it's all in his head. The one thing that, and I when I watched it a second time, I was like, oh, this is a man who's like, he's very lonely, and I think a big theme in that movie is just like being isolated. Like, he really, like, he goes on these dates, but they're very shallow, and he doesn't really have any friends. He's at the bar talking to uh, what's his name, John Michael Higgins from like all the Christopher Guest movies. Has like a weird cameo in there when they're drinking martinis, and like, he has friends, but they're not really friends. They're like coworkers, maybe. These women he dates, they're very like shallow relationships. And even like the girl who does want to get close to him, he kind of pushes her away. And so he's just like isolating himself. And I think that is leading to him being, by the end of it, he's completely out of his mind. Like, he's
Hmm.
talking to himself on the street. I think some of it is definitely real, but I think the parts that are real are when like Alva's interacting with him. I think those are the only scenes where it's real, and that's like, you can tell because she's legitimately terrified of him, and everywhere else, like, Rachel's obsessed with him, and his therapist is. I don't think the therapist was real at all. Um, the only time I thought, oh, maybe she was real is when she's like, when he calls her on the phone and she's just like hooking up with this like young, like muscular, like, good looking tan bronze god type of guy. Um, and so yeah, that was my reading of it, is that like, he's having this mental breakdown. Maybe he's not even in therapy. Maybe the therapy scenes are actually in the future and he's retelling this, or maybe all of it was being told like while he's already crazy on the street. But when I watched it the second time, a thing I picked up on that I thought was really interesting is that like, he starts out, he's in this relationship, he's with, I think, yeah, Jackie's her name. Um, when he kind of has this stable relationship, he pushes her away, and then every time he starts having like a little vampire attack, he's in the presence of somebody like in a happy relationship. Like the scene in the diner where he just freaks out and like
Hmm.
sees the cross and everything. The two girls in the diner are talking about like a really great date that one of them went on, and then he has like this freak out. And so something I noticed on the second viewing was like, every time he goes further and further into this vampire thing, like, somebody is happy in a relationship with somebody else. Like, he calls his therapist and she's got a hot date, and like, he becomes, that's when he's running around like eating pigeons and screaming, I'm a vampire, I'm a vampire. So I think that's ultimately is just this loneliness has pushed him into this psychotic depression.
Yeah.
And I don't think he likes being a literary agent.
Well, yeah, it's really interesting because I know there's an amazing Ringer article about like kind of catching
Yeah.
up with everyone about this, and I think it's Joseph Minion, the writer, kind of said it's he who at the time was hot shit. He'd just come off of writing After Hours for Martin Scorsese, and then it's really interesting in that article. You get this impression that a lot of the key players, bar kind of Nicolas Cage, like a kind of like star writer and actor, like of that kind of triumphant. Nicolas Cage was the only one who kind of went on to do like more great things, whereas like Joseph Minion has kind of drifted into obscurity, and the director Robert Bierman just came back to England and did a lot of like British TV, like like, and I get like it's that is a massive step down from like kind of being on the burgeoning verge of Hollywood. He was supposed to direct The Fly and had to pull out for like personal reasons, but then obviously did Vampire's Kiss, and even the production of that, like it was a film that was filmed in '87 and didn't get released until '89, and then like I think it was released the same weekend as Batman. So like
Oh God.
was never gonna have like a chance to do anything, and it's kind of like I don't know. Well, garnered like as as we've seen, it's garnered this kind of weird. Now that I've watched it a fair few times, I think this is great. Like I think there's something. I know that like Nicolas Cage himself in interviews has said like this is one of the films he's personally like most proud of because he kind of got to channel like German expressionism and like
Yeah, yeah.
got to do all this kind of like got to do unfortunately like there's never been a UK release, but I know there's like a US Blu-ray release that has a director's commentary, and it's Robert Bierman and Nick Cage, and I've like heard snippets and stuff like that. I think like chunks of it was shared on How Did This Get Made,
Mhm.
and like like Cage Cage says on that like just he wanted to see if he could get away with saying boo hoo like when he's crying. Like
Yeah.
can you get away in a movie of like being upset and just actually doing like the kind of what is it, almost comedy, like boo hoo, and like
Yeah, well, he doesn't even say it like that. I know that it's like, yeah, when he tries to shoot himself and it's blanks and he thinks he's immortal for a
yeah
minute. That's my reading of it, at least. But yeah, he doesn't even say boo hoo. He says it like boo hoo, and it's
yeah
like
yeah
every choice he made, he's like, I could do it weird or I could do it the craziest possible way,
Mhm,
and like I could walk from here to the mirror, or I could do this weird like Nosferatu pose and
mhm. Yeah, well,
try to glide to the mirror.
a lot of that stuff at the end as well when he's gone fully like vampire as well was
Mhm.
filmed guerrilla, so those people on the street who he's like interacting with didn't know that he was that like they were filming a movie. That's why it's a lot of like kind of like like long shots and stuff like that as opposed to like close-ups. Like when people are backing away from him, they just think, and at that time in
Yeah.
I think New York as well, there were a lot of crazies on the street. I don't know if the New York streets have kind of got a little less crazy in the, well, I guess this year.
Yeah, I mean, before I lived here, like I didn't grow up in the city. I lived up in New England and in New Hampshire. So like I only knew New York from movies, and like I grew up in the '90s. So like all the movies I saw were from the '80s or '90s when New York had like a lot of crime. Times Square was a place you didn't want to go. Like that's where
Mhm.
like drugs and hookers and gangs were hanging out and everything. And it was really like in through the '90s where when Rudy Giuliani was the mayor that he cleaned up the city. A lot of it was he basically like loaded homeless people on buses and shipped them to Jersey. Like there was a lot of like shitty things like that he did. So but in the '80s, yeah, there were crazy. I think I told you before, like I listened to the episode you did on Vampire's Kiss, where you mentioned like I don't know if you still live there, but I think you mentioned like, oh, we live in Brighton, and like you see crazy people on the street all the time, and
Yeah.
that's New York. Like, you're on the street, you're gonna keep away from a crazy person, but like it doesn't phase you here. There's a guy, wrapped in blankets playing a violin in the park, and you're just like, yeah, all right, you're gonna see that. And yeah, I had read that too, that they did a lot of wide shots to get like real audience, like real people's reaction to a man covered in blood with a basically like a wooden dagger begging you to like murder him on the street.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
my favorite one is he like runs up like the church steps and like asks an old man to like kill him, and the old man just like retreats into the church. And I kept a little bit of that in there because I love that, like the like the guerrilla style, like you said, of like bothering real people. And so like when he's asking like someone to murder him, I've like wrote it into the script that he's like running into the audience and like asking people in the audience like stake him to death.
So yeah, what is your like vision for like, let's just like say budget is not the option, or
Yeah.
like what would be your ideal staging for Vampires Kiss the musical? Would it be proscenium arch? Would it be in the round? Would it be kind of more like immersive theatre? How would you see it going?
Yeah, I definitely tried to, like, as I was writing it, I thought really hard about who knows when live theater is even going to be an option to do. But I'm trying to like write this thing, you want to adapt something for stage, and you want to think about like what's actually possible here. Like, I theaters do this all the time, but it's like I'm not going to have harness budget to like make Nicolas Cage fly around like a vampire bat or
Mm.
anything. Like, what's like a simple way we could do this? And there's plenty of great like independent black box theaters here, and I love those types of places for this because you can kind of do things minimally, and the fact that it's a black box, audiences are just like, all right, you make me see whatever you want to make me see. And I've always loved those types of spaces. So at least like the vision that I have for it is like, um, like one side of the stage is where his desk is. The other side of the stage is the psychiatrist's office. So there's like the couch and the chair over there. And kind of the foreground when it becomes the 80s club scene is like, lights and music are blasting, and you can kind of have everybody move up there. One thing that I really, really wanted to have is I kind of like, for the most part, cut out like transitions. There's only a couple times where it like truly like blacks out, and like now we're in another scene. So really cutting down on like, okay, then we move out the bedroom scene, and this is the bedroom. Like I really wanted moments of him just like there's a part where he's just like in his underwear. It's when like him and Jackie are, having sex, and like the bat comes in and he loses his mind. And then like the lights just come up on the other side of the stage, and Dr. Glazer's sitting over there, and he just like, there's no transition. He just walks over and has his therapy appointment. And then as he walks back to work and starts yelling at Alva, he's like pulling his pants on, putting his jacket back on. So I really wanted to have just like, here's these like very kind of bare bone, like 3 sets. And then when he's like destroying the room, like he basically just destroys the set and then uses the couch from the therapy session as the coffin, because that's like my favorite vampire thing he does is
Yeah.
and I feel like that's a thing people think about. Like, yeah, so that was kind of how I thought about it, is like it's all just kind of laid out this way. And if the space had like like a riser on one side where like you could have some action that's like not just to like establish this is a different location, having like Alva and her brother, like that's their house over there where they kind of have these short scenes. And yeah, and then my goal like for the music side of it was I really wanted it to be like almost as corny as like Alice Cooper at his most glam rock, or like Jeff Steinman and Meatloaf, just when it's just like so big and overly theatrical. But really just like a small like glam rock band in the corner.
I genuinely like, so yeah, I was saying to you before we started recording that I I tried to get the full Vampires Kiss the musical experience today. So I like had the script up, and then had like a playlist of all the tracks in the right order, and then like just went through it and did it. And it was like, genuinely, by the end of it, I was smiling from ear to ear, and I was like,
Oh, that's great.
I would love, like, just because they're so like, you've managed to pull out those kind of things in it that are absolutely absurd. Like when I rewatched it again the other night, and it's like a prominent character in the musical is the little boy from upstairs, and it's like Yeah, there is just that choice in that scene early on where like it kind of hangs on him for a few like a few too many frames. Like
Yeah.
it's like to make him seem like he's important, but then it's like no, it's just the fact like you need somebody to witness. Like I don't, you need somebody to witness this madness is going on. It just happens to be this almost like Damien-esque looking kid as well. Like
He's a terrifying kid. His eyes are just like, they're big and just like they see through you.
yeah.
And yeah, I thought he deserved to be a bigger character, so I made him a character. When I shared the final draft, it's like it's a one act musical. If you're listening to this and you're like, I can't sit through 2.5 hours of Vampires Kiss the musical, we're talking less than an hour here. I respect all of you too much to put you through a full length thing, but the first draft was like 65 pages, and I had the little boy just showing up constantly. And one of the notes I got from a friend of mine was like, look, we get it, the little boy's your favorite character, but you can cut some of this down. And then as I started cutting things out, I just kind of put him in like where it made sense. And then most importantly, at the end, I kind of have Sharon, the imaginary like woman that the possibly imaginary psychiatrist sets him up with. Like they just form a family, and he's like this Tiny Tim character who says "God bless us, everyone." And like, I wrote him this like little ragtimey song where he just sings about how he likes watching people hook up in the apartment building, and that's he doesn't have parents. It seems he's just around, and
Yeah, because I
very
mean,
bizarre.
there is a scene in the film, isn't there, where he kind of gets yanked away by his mum. Like she
That's,
knows
yeah, his
what
mother comes up, and yeah.
she knows what he's up to. Do you know what I mean? She
Mhm.
knows that that's what he does all the time. The thing, like, and like, yeah, one of the things I wanted to speak to you again, like, budget is not an issue here. If like somebody came like, here's a blank check, we're gonna put this
Yeah.
on Broadway, like, who would you like? Unfortunately, the original cast have declined. Cage said he'll pop up for a cameo, but like, who would you want to cast for this production?
Yeah. Yeah, this is really tough. I gotta like the part of like of Peter Lowe, Nicolas Cage's character. It's got to be someone who can really just like be completely like out of their mind. I'm trying to think of like who would be someone I've seen recently who's just like certifiably insane. I really feel like you got to go like with those experimental like the off Broadway people. I feel like this is the kind of show that you want to find some unknowns who really want to like prove themselves. I mean I feel
I'm
like it'd
saying that
be
A-listers here, like,
A-listers. Okay.
so that's what I'm saying. The budget is not an option. Like I think I've got a, I think, well, yeah, I'll give you my like
Yeah. Who do you have?
who I think could go there for Peter Lowe. It's Robert Pattinson. I think he's a guy who
Okay.
would like, even in a filmic like adaptation of this today. I feel like he's like a youngish actor who would go there. Or if we were going younger, but then again, I don't think he looks like an adult yet, and I think he needs to really go fucking weird and crazy. Is Timothy Chalamet? Like,
Okay.
do you know what I mean? He needs that weird. He hasn't really like done a weird movie yet. Like you need that in your back pocket. You need a vampire's kiss basically in your back
Right.
pocket.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, even like after seeing the movie wasn't great, but Zac Efron as Ted Bundy, I think Zac Efron's got some crazy in him that
Yeah,
he could definitely unleash in this, and he can at least sing somewhat. He was in Greatest Showman, so we know he's got some pipes. He could definitely do that. I think for the Jennifer Beals character, I feel like who I think she's so great in that movie, and she's another one where it's like, yeah, I guess she never really. I don't really know what she did after that.
yeah.
Like she was, Flashdance was like her big
Flash in
moment,
the
and
pan. Yeah,
then yeah, yeah, literally Flash in the Pan. And yeah, and like that part in the movie, I think she does this really well, and I definitely tried to like keep that in the script. But like when she's Rachel the vampire, she is just this like temptress, very sexy, but also like terrifying monster. And then when you at the end when she's just like oh, hey, how's it going? Like she's just like a 20 something party girl. She's just young and hot and hanging out at clubs and just like being a normal 20 something year old girl. I feel I'm trying to think of like who would be like who is somebody that would pull that off really really well. I don't know. Did you have an ideal casting
Uh,
for the
ag-
Rachel?
Again, I think it might be from the same like when I thought of Robert Pattinson, I thought Zoe Kravitz. Just in that,
Okay.
like she's got that mystique, like she's got those kind of
Hmm.
like mysterious eyes to her. In that, like she could definitely play the kind of temptress part of it. And then I don't know. I haven't seen the High Fidelity like remake series, so I don't
Yeah,
know if
yeah,
she's got the like. But I imagine to do that, she's got the pep about her to just be like a fun-loving 20-something at the same
yeah.
time. But I don't. You
Or
could.
even like Zendaya, who might be too young for
Mhm.
the part, but yeah, in a few years she might age into it, and then Zac Efron might be too old, so
Yeah.
maybe someone who's a bit more close in age. But um, yeah, for the therapist, I definitely feel like somebody who's like maternal but also intense. And I'm thinking if we could get Kathy Bates to play Dr. Glazer, I feel
Oh,
like that would be just perfect casting. I feel like she's got that. I mean, even just her in Misery, she's got those. She can just like really like lock
yeah.
onto you. But even in The Office, she's like a dominating presence and definitely like takes no shit. But also, uh, yeah, she could be like both very warm and also very terrifying. And then Alva's a tough one because Alva's it's she's so I feel so like by the end of every time I've seen that movie, which is only twice, I guess, but even like working on the script, I like kept like Alva, like I feel bad for Alva the character because it's like bad stuff is about to happen to her. She gets like assaulted by her boss and narrowly escapes, and it's like truly terrible. She's just like trying to work this job. Her mom's like trying to teach her like how to have a strong work ethic and everything, and she like feels like a quitter and doesn't want to quit the job, but like it's a toxic work environment to say the least. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think who would be perfect for that. Also, she needs to be able to pull off a dress that looks like it's made out of tablecloths. I feel like that's hard to do. Like Alva Maria Conchita Alonso is her name, who is also like a South American like superstar. I don't know if you look too much into that actress's backstory, but she's like a huge pop star.
Yeah, but have like she's taken a weird turn in the
Yes.
last in the recently. She is a vehement Trump supporter, and like because as part of this podcast, I follow like anyone who's ever been in a Nick Cage film on Twitter. So like, and then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, what's this? And then it's like, yeah, Maria Conchita Alonso just sharing loads of like sign this petition, like get a recount and stuff like that. And I'm like,
Oh, geez.
oh, and then I was like thinking back to Vampire's Kiss. I'm like, Peter Lowe does give her a hard time, but I don't know. Maybe Alva is the bad guy.
Oh yeah, that's. I mean, I looked into it a little bit because when I first posted she must have like a Google alert for Vampire's Kiss because like she found it on Twitter and like retweeted. I was like, oh, that's cool. Alva retweeted this and like if she's the closest thing to a hero in that movie. But then like I went through some of her feed and like I looked up and that's how I found out like oh she's like incredibly famous like a big pop star. But
Mhm.
then I found like in 2016 she was big on like Jill Stein and like vote third party to like blow all this up. And I was like, oh, that's not great. Like that's a big reason why we've got like this dumbest version of fascism trying to slide in here right now. And so, I mean, it makes sense. The next step is, yeah, let's just not trust anything and sign
Yeah,
these petitions and everything. So maybe even someone who's a little unhinged in real life, who everybody can like enjoy watching her be the hero of the show, but also secretly know that they're a little out of their mind. Or maybe even someone who is like an America's sweetheart, and let's get Selena Gomez in there. Let's really get somebody who is a popular pop star who has to then
perfect.
play against type and be a very meek type of character. And she was with Justin Bieber for so long. Maybe that
Oh,
something's going
that'll
on.
give some tension on set as
Yeah,
well. Bring the film some tension, and
yeah.
that will really bring people to the theater because they will be like, it's Selena Gomez and Zac Efron like back together, but they're apart. And no, sorry, you said Justin. Yeah, she's
Justin
with
Bieber. Yeah.
Justin Bieber. Oh, bloody hell, but. Oh no, that whole thing doesn't make any sense. Maybe Bieber could play low. Who knows? Who knows?
Honestly, I bet in real life he is a bit of a Peter Lowe. I feel like he was famous too early, and I feel like the same could be said for Nicolas Cage, and they're both a little unhinged from it.
Yeah, well, like the whole Nicolas Cage thing, I find well, obviously, I find it fascinating because I've dedicated
Yeah.
like all this time. Like, I spoke to someone the other day and realised I can't remember the last time I didn't go a day without typing the word Nicolas Cage, and I was like, oh boy, like this is what my life has become, or like especially yeah when I get in the flow of doing these podcasts quite often, I'm like I've gone like I've said the words Nicolas Cage like so much, and it's like and weirdly I can never just say Nick. Like I say it like very occasionally, but even that feels a bit weird. Like to just say Nick. So I'm always like Nicolas Cage, Nick Cage,
Right.
and it's like oh fucking hell. Like, but yeah, who I'm trying to think who would play the little boy.
The
That is
little boy. uh, I mean, all right. So it's really funny. So one of my friends who I did sketch comedy stuff with at UCB before it unfortunately shut down in New York because of the pandemic. But my friend Allie Gordon, who has done a lot of theater and is like a fantastic musical theater performer, when she heard the Little Boy song when I posted it on social media, she was like, I demand that I be cast as this part. One of her specialties in sketch comedy is putting on a little boy wig. It's really her niche. I think she'd be great at it. Um, Also, just open casting call for anybody, any child who played Gavroche in Les Mis. I think that's what I was really channeling, is a precocious young man. I forget the actor's name, but it's the kid who played Dustin in Stranger Things, and now he's definitely too old for it. But
yeah, Gaten
uh,
Maserato. Yeah,
yeah. Honestly, though, I think it would also be very funny to have an older person in like short pants and like a little kid
yes,
like suit, just
I know
like
exactly what you mean.
yeah,
That
and
or
like their bio is like played Gavroche 20 years ago or something.
the kid Julian Hillard, who's in Color Out of Space, was in The Haunting of Hill House.
Mm.
The young kid with the glasses. I'm not sure if you watched.
Yeah, yeah.
And like he's just got this career, like his like IMDb, like so far, and he's like very young, is like better than like a lot of people's IMDb's because it's like Haunting of Hill House, Color Out of Space, The Conjuring 3, and he's like
Mhm.
quickly becoming like the scary kid in like in horror stuff, and like he does a perfect like haunted look, and I think like
Mm.
from like kind of A-list casting he would be perfect in the way that like he can do that like look straight through you stare that like kind of chills you to the bone with the kid in Vampire's Kiss.
Yeah. There was a horror movie that came out a couple years ago that was it was actually pretty good. It was I think it was either just Prodigy or The Prodigy, but it was like a serial killer who's like into some sort of weird voodoo, like gets killed and his like soul takes over a little boy. And I don't know. I don't know if this little boy, like, if this was his first film or if he was in anything before. But the kid from The Prodigy, he also, maybe it's even the same kid from Hill House. Like, I don't know how many like terrifying children there are available for this type of stuff. Um, but this kid, like, it's actually pretty good, mostly because this kid is so convincing as like a middle-aged serial killer in little boy form. Uh, and if he could also like do a little soft shoe tap dance, I feel like that's exactly what that part needs.
The kid's name is Jackson Robert Scott, and I'm looking at a picture of him right now, and
Hmm.
yeah, he's got the look. He's got that like perfect mix of looking like quite sweet, but at the same time, absolutely terrifying, like a porcelain-like face. I hope this is the right. Yeah, it's got to be the right kid. 12 years.
Yeah,
Yeah. The
yeah.
prodigy. Yeah.
And then the most important character in the show that we need to talk about is, of course, New York City, which that's the cliche of, New York's a character in this story. And my friend Patrick J. Riley, follow him at not Pat Riley. Forces me to plug his own Twitter, but he's actually the one that I wrote the Lewis and Clark musical with, and he was one that I like. He's like an actual like theater like not just a theater nerd, but like genuinely like a theater expert. Like it's his obsession and has been his whole life. So um, he was like the person I consulted for like, read the script, let me know what you think. And he gave me like legitimate, like good, like theater notes as if this was a serious project that like we had funding for. But he demanded that he play New York, which is why the first character that we meet in New York is a Mets fan, because I wanted to honor his fandom of the New York Mets. But I feel like I don't think he's from New York, but he definitely has the New York attitude. If Danny DeVito just put on a bunch of different hats and ran around playing, a New York Mets fan and a hot dog vendor and a cab driver, I feel like he is all of those different characters slammed together.
Perfect.
um,
Yeah.
I have no idea where Danny DeVito's from. I feel like he's from the Philadelphia area, but I might just be thinking it because of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Danny DeVito, and especially like he could play those guys, especially like a lot of the role, the kind of
Yeah.
like company roles in this, or like the bit parts in this are very
Mhm.
much like menial jobs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like the cab driver, yeah, the hot
A
dog
very
vendor,
very working class type of attitude.
yeah, and it's and I think like DeVito's got the look for it as well.
Mhm.
Like he's like, I don't know, quite slub like slubby looking, even though, yeah. And I think obviously playing Frank for like what 13, 14 years, but
Yeah.
people have got this like look of him that like they think, yeah, like he would be yeah, and he would be perfect. So how many people would you see in the company, like cast all in all? Are you having any
Yeah.
like backup dancers or anything like that in this production?
So the way I have it planned out now, and I thought long and hard about this, because I was like trying to figure out like uh even if I wanted to do like a reading of this, like how many friends do I have to beg to show up to do a reading of it even? And I have it down to like 9 people, and it's like Peter Lowe is just Peter Lowe the whole time. Peter Lowe is basically on stage the entire,
Hmm.
with the exception of the scene with uh, Alva and her brother. Like the mechanics come out and they form a little doo-wop group, and he like gives her a gun at the beginning of the show.
Which is
Um,
perfect.
the song is called "A Girl's Best Friend Is a Gun," and um, but like for the most part, Peter Lowe's on the stage the whole time. Dr. Glazer like really only exists like sitting on the side of it, but I have it down to like 9 characters. New York, all those little bit parts are like one guy just wearing different hats the whole time. Jackie and Sharon are the same person, just in a different wig. Rachel is only, I think only she's only Rachel. She might like, I think I had some people they just put on like, especially the women in the cast, like now you're a mechanic, you just put a fake mustache on and coveralls and that's it. But for some of the bigger numbers, like where there's like a full company, if money was no object, I would really love just like a full, like even almost like the Rockettes at Radio City, just like too many people out in like bat costumes with like, or like puppeteers with like fake bat costumes. Like if we had like 20 people coming out in these obscure like, or even like for like now we're in the club, just like a ton of people filling out this crowded club.
Hmm.
Because in the movie he's like elbow to elbow with people trying to get to a dance
Yeah.
floor. I'm like, that doesn't even look fun. That looks like way too many people.
So like genuinely, what is your plan with this? Is it just a fun internet thing, or would you actually like to like put this on in some capacity, or what would you like to do with it? Obviously there's so many avenues, like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was just I'm very bored and I miss writing funny things, because all of that is kind of gone right now. That's really what like drove me to work on it. But then I mean, I had a lot of fun writing it, and like writing songs for something so stupid is just so much fun for me. So I wanted to, like I said, I needed to be like a rock band type of thing. So I mean, I know plenty of musicians, so I would love to just put together like, a 4-piece rock band that's playing the music for it. And I would love to do it as like a small scale thing, like I said, like black box theater. Once theaters are able to open safely and people are like, you know, vaccinated and herd immune, everything like that, and like people can safely be in a group like that. Like, I would love to find a place, one of those smaller theaters in New York. There's the Pit is a great theater here. The Pit Loft in particular. It's on 29th Street in New York, and I've done a lot of things there. And it's like it's perfect because it only seats about like, I think like somewhere like 50 to 100. It's a relatively small space. It's easy to fill and feel good about selling out a crowd, even though it's like small. But it's also like it's a big, wide stage, so like you have a lot of room to play around with. It's easy to like, you know, get backstage and like use these like side doors that they have built in there. So a place like that where it's just like kind of bare bones black box theater, but it has some like good lighting and projection effects you can do. Like that's kind of the dream for it. And through doing like, you know, sketch comedy and theater things and knowing a lot of people through Upright Citizens Brigade and other comedy things like that. And also just like this movie has such a cult following that I feel like there is a subset of weirdos that would definitely come out and see it. So
Yeah.
ideally, I would get to work with some people that I've met through that and like bring them in to put this on and do it at least at a small scale for like a weekend of shows in New York and try to get a video of it, maybe send it out to some festivals. There's also plenty of theaters out there that do like um, weird musical parody things. A lot of them exist like out in Los Angeles, which I don't have any theater connections out there. If you're living in England or Los Angeles and listening to this and you have a theater and you think, wow, I want to be the first one to produce Vampires Kiss the musical, it is available. So let me know. But I would love to do it for real. Like I wrote it just as like a dumb thing, but like even every time I go back and like maybe edit a line or I'll think of a new joke and I'll like edit a couple lines in there, I just think about like how much fun it would be to have people do this for real. Because
Hmm.
I mean, I really did write it, even though it is ridiculous. Like I wrote it like earnestly, like I actually cared about the characters in this. And the first draft of it I wrote, the big note I got was like, this is a little too dark, because I watched it and I was like, this is a man like bearing his soul and being rejected by everybody he loves, that he collapses. And then even at the end of the movie, which by the way, another episode about Vampires Kiss you did, I was so glad that you pointed out that he has this shitty California surfer accent, but he says he's from Philadelphia and grew up in New York. And it's like, you can barely hear it because the music swells and you miss it, and he's not mic'd up properly. But when I heard that, I like had to rewind it to make sure I heard it right, because it was so crazy. But even his imaginary perfect girlfriend, like they start fighting as he's walking into his apartment, and like when Emilio comes and kills him at the end, like he's like fighting with this like even his imaginary girlfriend doesn't like him.
Hmm.
And so I really wrote all of that in, and here's somebody who just wants to be loved by anybody, and he's getting closer and closer. And at the end, it's like, did he just commit suicide in front of us? Like, what are we actually seeing? And I was told that's way too dark, but I still kept in like I basically made it a lot more like self-parody about how ridiculous it is that one, this movie exists, and two, a musical exists of it. Um, but like, I think it would just be like so fun, and hopefully it's fun even if you haven't seen the movie. I think it'll be enhanced if you've seen the movie, but I feel like it's a fun thing where you would at least get to you would at least feel like I've experienced something from
Yeah,
this.
definitely. Obviously, a big thing over here in the UK is the Edinburgh Festival, like the
Yeah.
comedy festival, and it
Mhm.
feels like something that would like, even if it ran for that month at Edinburgh,
Yeah, yeah.
would be something that you would see. I think there's been like Alien the music. There's
I
all
saw that one. It was amazing.
yeah. So there's always kind of like some kind of like film. I think there was like a one man musical version of Army of the Dead or something like that, and it's like oh yeah. So like it feels perfect, and it is genuinely fun. And I think like you get an amazing experience from just even doing what I did with the kind of reading through and listening to the songs as and when they come. Because especially if you have seen the film, like it adds an element to it. But like you get lost in it, and it's got that right level of like parody to it, and it's got I don't it's a super fun project, and I totally get your point when you're talking about when you write a song, like, because yeah, I sometimes mess about like writing music and stuff like that. As soon as I try and write anything earnest, it's like it's really fucking hard. The moment I go, you know what, I'm gonna write like a joke song about something, the lyrics, like especially like lyrics, come just like that, and I'm like, yeah, I'll do this. Like I've written like stupid songs about, I don't know. I once said to an ex girlfriend, like, yeah, as a flippant joke, I'll write a song about like how lovely your vagina is, and then like, do you know what I mean? Like the lyrics,
Yeah, that's so
like,
romantic.
but like it's the thing of like that song was like a real bait and switch because it was like it just sounded like a lovely almost like the Cheers theme. Do you, like
Yeah, yeah.
I kind of had that in my mind of like almost like talking about a place you really like to go, and then like the kind of like denouement at the end is like, oh, actually, I'm talking about a vagina.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel the same way, and it's like my wife and I, we both love music, and like one of our favorite things, like anytime we get to see live music, it's always great. But we have very different ears for music. Like she very much like we'll have songs on in the car, and it could be my favorite song, and she'll like laugh or like react emotionally to a lyric, and I'll realize I've never listened to the lyrics of this song. Like it's always been like the least important thing. Whereas like, and it might just be that like, I studied music theory and I was like a wind player for so long and play guitar and things now. So like I'm focused on like how to like what was the composition here, and that's
Hmm.
what always like lit my ears up. And same thing, like I remember once in high school I tried to like write a love song for a girl, and then like very quickly was like, well, this I'm not going to be love song guy. I hope I can get funny. Maybe I'll be funny guy and maybe that'll work. But like my favorite, like, I mean, that's why I liked American Psycho the musical, was it also was like a great mix of like it's parody of this type of thing, but also like, when you try to like parody it, like there's a song in American Psycho the musical where like he is like chainsawing people, but it's a very upbeat song and it's like somewhat parody, but it's also like, the character is what adds any weight to it. So hopefully some of that comes through. Like I wrote a song for Alva where it is like a joke, like she's talking about how she's very plain and wears tablecloth dresses, and she's just taking a train from Pelham Bay, and but like in writing it from her point of view, it like actually becomes a little earnest because she's like talking about like how she has dreams and she puts up with this job because she loves books, she wants to work in literature, this is like a dream that she has. And then it actually like adds some weight when she quits at the end because it's like, oh, she actually liked this
Hmm.
industry, and like he took that away from her. But yeah, I totally get, and that's actually why like my favorite like musicians are like Warren Zevon and Frank Zappa, who I love their music, but then their lyrics are also, even if they are like about something serious, they're usually like pretty stupid and silly. Like even Warren Zevon's like, he's got some great songs from when he was diagnosed with cancer that are like so sad and tragic, but like the lyrics are like my shit's fucked up and like
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. And they're so funny even though they're super tragic. And like Frank Zappa's talking about like censorship and like governments and all these things, but he's doing it in like the silliest possible way. And I've always really loved like that type of lyric writing. And it's a good thing that type of thing exists because I can't do sincere lyrics. It
Yeah,
always kind of seems kind of, stupid and unearnest when the more earnest you try to be.
yeah, it's one of my favorite artists of all time is Randy Newman, and it's like that
Yeah,
same
yeah.
thing of like it's these lovely compositions and stuff like that, but like and even a song that has kind of like developed a new life by somebody else with "You Can Keep Your Hat On," and it's
Mm,
like when you hear it sung by Randy Newman, it takes on a whole new life of its own because it's like a
yeah.
song about like this awkward, like chubby guy, like saying like baby, like take off your clothes, and it's like it doesn't have the sexy appeal, say like when Tom Jones covered it, and it's like, well,
Mhm.
that's a guy dripping with sex appeal, or like yeah, Randy. It's like his whole discography is kind of like one of the songs that like really resonates with me is I think it's like "Memo to My Son," and it's
Mm.
like what one of the lyrics in there is like, when you're old enough, I'll show you how smart I am. And it's this kind of like love letter to his son, but at the same time, it's kind of like being like, You'll appreciate like how funny and like
Yeah,
like kind of like yeah great I am, but you're a bit too young at the moment, and it's got this humor to it, and I think that's what makes
he's so good at that.
and that's what makes like genuinely. I'm not just blowing like hot smoke up your ass. Like genuinely like this, the songs in this, and yeah, Girl from Pelham Bay is a perfect example of that. Of like as I was like listening to it, I was like, oh yeah, this has got a like a bit of like a bit of punch to it, and like I would recommend to anyone who is listening to do exactly what I did by just downloading the songs, downloading the PDF of the script, and going through it. And like, I genuinely hope, Kevin, that like I look on Twitter one day and you're like, you know what? We're putting this on in a black box theater in New York, and I'll be like, I'm not gonna see it, but I'm still pumping fist because like, yeah, I can't get over to New York for love nor money at the moment, but still,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like I'd be so happy to see that because it is. It's something fun, and like you said, there's definitely an audience for it. In that,
Mm.
I don't if people went for a year to 18 months to watch Rocky Horror Picture Show every Friday at midnight, there's definitely enough like millennial kids, even for like the ironic factor of being like, oh,
Absolutely.
there's Vampire's Kiss, like Vampire's Kiss the musical, and it's like, let's go watch it. And I felt like, yeah, like, but I don't know. There's earnest fans out there as well. I know that Robert Bierman himself has said that he teaches like at a university in England, and he gets younger students come up to him now and says like, and say to him like, I actually love Vampire's Kiss, and it's like this. It's I don't know. It's this film that it seems to be finding its audience all these years later, and I genuinely, hand on heart, believe it is a film, and I think it's something you mentioned like flippantly in the musical. It's a film before its time, like because I like, and I think back to American Psycho's case in point of this. That is a film that is made in like the early 2000s that looks at the 80s, whereas and like kind of condemns it, like the excess of it. Whereas Vampire's Kiss is a film made in the 80s that looks at the excess of it and condemns it, and it's like, and it obviously adds to the thing of like, I could probably say this as an outsider. I'm not sure if you all agree, but like America sometimes doesn't have like the biggest sense of humor about itself, especially if it's
No.
something that's happening at the time. Like
Mhm.
afterward, like obviously there is a contingent who will like poke fun of it at the time, but then for the kind of masses to get on board after the fact, they will go like, wasn't George Bush really stupid? Like, do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or like decades later, you'll go like, oh yeah, the Vietnam War, yeah, boy, that was bad, wasn't it? And it's like, oh, well, more of you should have been saying that at the time.
Yeah, yeah. No, honestly, I feel like Edinburgh would be a dream, and it sounds. I know that they have so many like weird shows like that, but from what I've heard, the UK would be my people when we want to make fun of American culture, because yeah, we take ourselves very seriously. I don't know if you've been watching the news, but we got a lot of people who dare not criticize America at all because we're great and we're going to be great and we've always been great, but we're going to be great again at the same time, even though we've already been great. And yeah, that's another reason why I for a little while I was talking to a theater in London that wanted to do the Lewis and Clark one, because they're like, oh, we love anything that's making fun of American history, and it's like great because me too.
Amazing. Well, Kevin, it's been so amazing to talk to you about this amazing
Yeah,
project.
this has been so fun. Thank you.
I genuinely hope that someday we get to see some actors treading the boards, singing these songs, speaking the lines you've written.
Yeah.
Where can people keep up to date with everything you're doing, and obviously keeping a finger on the pulse of whether this production actually hits the stage?
Yeah. So yeah, best way to follow me is on Twitter or Instagram. It's just my name, Kevin, Kevin Froleiks, Froleiks. So at Kevin Froleiks. The link is in the bio for both. It's just honestly, if you want to read the script and listen to the songs, it's in a Google Drive. You don't have to pay for it. It's free. You can download it. I don't care. Share it with your friends. If you want to be in it, my email's on the script. My handles are on the script. So yeah, definitely check it out. I also, if you're interested in hearing more songs that have very not earnest lyrics and are just silly, if you go to kfcomedy.bandcamp.com, my folk album 10 Songs Too Many is on there. It's a bunch of songs I wrote and recorded during the early part of quarantine. And because we haven't really handled the pandemic that well, the songs are still relevant today.
Perfect. Thank you so much again for coming on and talking about this with me.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'll talk to you later.
Again, a massive thank you to Kevin Froleiks, and just for him for coming up with the idea for this, what will be a Broadway smash, what will be a West End staple, I am sure. And thank you guys for listening to this episode and listening to every episode. It really does mean the world to me. All of the support means the world to me all of the time. For those of you, who haven't yet subscribed and rated and reviewed the podcast on Apple Podcasts, if you could do that, that would be fantastic. 5 stars, of course. It really helps with getting the word out there. As my kind of mantra to myself is, this could be somebody's favourite podcast, and the next film I'm talking about could be somebody's favourite film. And if you want to get in touch with the podcast, you can do that via email, which is cagedinpod@gmail.com, or you can hit me on the social medias, which is Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, all at cagedinpod. Come on over, have a chat. I love chatting about films and stuff like that. You can kind of get a glimpse of what's coming up. You can get some of my hot takes on some of the just general film news, and lots of funny pictures that I kind of find of Nicolas Cage or the Coppola family as we move ever closer to the start of Coppola Connections. As for next week's full-time episode, I will be joined by the amazing Nick Helm to talk about Colour Outer Space. It's a nice, rambly, long one. And it's real fun. I had a lot of fun chatting to Nick, and I hope you have a lot of fun listening to that one as much as we did recording. It's 2 hours plus, so I will not be chatting as much as I did on this one. If you want to support the podcast financially, as I mentioned in the intro, you can buy a t-shirt, you can buy a print, all on cagedinpodcast.limitedrun.com. Or you can sign up to Patreon, which is patreon.com/cagedinpod. In the coming months, there's going to be tons more stuff over on Patreon. Just because, I don't know, I would like to make a little bit of money out of this in some weird way. But I do need like the support to keep the lights on over here on Caged In Towers. And I don't know, it's just a chance to do more fun stuff without clogging up the main feed. It's for the kind of die-hard Caged In and Cage fans, so head on over there and subscribe is how you do. Become a Patreon, become a part of the game. Amazing. So as always, guys, I've been Petros Silvers, I've been Caged In, you've been amazing, and to play us out is Kevin Froleiks with his future hit from Vampire's Kiss the musical, and this is Back to Work.
I really don't have time for this. I gotta get back to work, get back to the office.
Peter.
Time is money and money is power, and I can only step away from my desk for an hour.
Peter, I can't help but notice.
Whatever, Dr. Glazer, whatever you say. I'll see you same time next week. I'll see you next Tuesday. 'Cause I gotta get back to work. I gotta get back to work today.
Are you finished?
Yes.